Major General William Tecumseh Sherman may be best known for his Savannah campaign, known as the March to the Sea. As Sherman said after the war, the March to the Sea seems to have captured everyone, whereas it was child's play compared to the other. Put another way, Sherman also said, if I were to express the measure of the relative importance of the March to the Sea, and from Savannah northward, I would place the former at 1 and the latter at 10, or the maximum. On December 21, 1864, Sherman completes his march through Georgia with the capture of Savannah. Supply ships were anchored off the Georgia coast waiting for an avenue to open up so the supplies could be delivered. With the capture of Fort McAllister and then Savannah, the supplies come pouring in, fresh uniforms, shoes, medical supplies, fresh troops to replace those hurt or sick, and food. A lot of food. Especially fodder for the 40,000 animals that will support his army. Grant now wants Sherman to join him in Virginia as quickly as possible, believing with the addition of Sherman's army, he will be able to force Robert E. Lee and his Army of Northern Virginia out into the open where Lee's army, in Grant's own words, can be crushed. That would bring the total for the Union Army to over 200,000 compared to Lee's 65,000. Sherman will make Raleigh, North Carolina his final objective. From there, Sherman can go wherever Grant needs him. And as the supplies make their way to Sherman's army, Sherman begins to cross his army over the Savannah River. First by ferry to establish a bridgehead for a pontoon bridge that will be built, and to locate and test the Confederates' resolve. Meanwhile, Sherman is having even bigger issues than the Confederates can cause. The weather has been horrible. Snow flurries, freezing rain, ice on the ground, and rain the rest of the time. It would rain 28 of the first 45 days of 1865. Sherman had hoped to get started by January 10th, but with the difficulties of crossing the Savannah and moving inland, especially when the pontoon bridge is washed away, Sherman would decide he could wait no longer. More than 100 miles of road would need to be corduroyed, laying logs and fence rails down so wagons and artillery pieces don't get stuck in the mud. Fearing Confederate reinforcements could be arriving, he ordered the official beginning of the Carolinas campaign to be February 1st. It would be another week before the rest his men and their supplies crossed the Savannah River. Sherman needs to decide what route he will take to get to Raleigh. Sherman has no intentions of going to Charleston. He saw Charleston as already destroyed, and he wasn't going to waste time and spill blood over a city that he believed will surrender before he is out of the state. He is interested in Branchville, but is concerned that it will be heavily defended. Sherman isn't looking for a fight. As one of his captains said, "Our job is not to fight, but to consume and destroy." Instead, Sherman will choose Midway as his next target. Midway is a small railroad town about 10 miles west of Branchville. Sherman will begin destroying railroads here. Sherman is also interested in Augusta. He's not interested in attacking it, but using it in a way to fool Beauregard. His primary objective in South Carolina is the state capital Columbia. Sherman sees the city differently than Beauregard. When Sherman looks at Columbia, he sees Robert E. Lee and his Army of Northern Virginia. Sherman writes to General Halleck, now Chief of Staff for the Union Army, "Every step I take from this point northward is as much a direct attack on Lee's army as though we were operating within the sound of his artillery. Lee is in big trouble right now. Besides having Grant breathing down his neck with an army twice his size, Lee is running out of supplies. His troops' uniforms are in tatters and thousands are without shoes. Intercepted mail tell how they have nothing to eat, or if they do it's spoiled cornmeal. Desertions are approaching 100 men a day. Lee's main sources of supplies, the Shenandoah Valley and Wilmington, have been cut off. Sherman has already taken Atlanta and a big part of Georgia off the table. Sherman believes if he can capture Columbia and destroy the 3 railroads that terminate there, he can effectively isolate not just Columbia, but Augusta and Charleston as well. South Carolina will no longer be able to supply Lee. But Sherman has a big concern. Like Lee, he believes Beauregard is concentrating his troops around Columbia. Sherman is prepared to bypass Columbia if the resistance is too strong and just destroy the railroads. But he hopes to trick Beauregard into removing some of the troops he has in Columbia. Sherman will use the same tactics he used in Georgia. He will split his 60,000-man force into 2 wings that will keep Beauregard guessing at his objective. The left wing, commanded by General Henry Warner Slocum, will march in the direction of Augusta. It will be led by Sherman's cavalry, under the command of General Judson Kilpatrick. Kilpatrick's orders are to march on Augusta, destroying railroad where he can, and then demonstrate in front of Augusta, making it look like he is going to attack without actually doing so. Sherman's hope is that when Beauregard sees the threat to Augusta, he will shift troops from Columbia to defend it. Since there aren't troops in Columbia, it will be up to Wheeler to get to Augusta first. But Wheeler has other plans. He sets up an ambush in Aiken, which Kilpatrick will willingly ride into. While these two forces fight each other, the rest of the left wing has already turned towards Columbia. Meanwhile, the right wing, under the command of O. Howard, and the wing Sherman will ride with, will march past Charleston. They will find their greatest resistance when they reach the Salkehatchie River. Here 3 bridges will be defended by Confederate forces. But once the middle bridge is flanked, the troops defending the 3 crossings will evacuate their positions. From here, Sherman will send a division of mounted infantry to Branchville to demonstrate, keeping the Confederates from pursuing Sherman's rear. The rest will march to Midway, and capture it without firing a shot. Sherman's right wing will have one more hotly contested bridge to deal with. That will be the bridge over the Congaree Creek, just a few miles outside Columbia. Fewer than 3,000 Confederates with 10 pieces of artillery will try to stop Sherman's right wing. 3,000 Union troops of the 1st Division 15th Army Corps and 5 pieces of artillery will eventually flank the Confederate position, causing the Confederates to fall back and give up the fight. Both wings are now just across the river from Columbia. Columbia will be surrendered on February 17th. Charleston will surrender the next day. And 2 days later, Sherman's army will leave Columbia and continue its march to Raleigh by way of Winnsboro. Heading towards Winnsboro convinced Beauregard that Sherman was headed to Charlotte, North Carolina next and began preparing for its defense. This will be another feint as Sherman's next objective is Florence, North Carolina. Beauregard will be replaced by General Joe Johnston on February 22nd.